Let's see. Genesis 50. Hey, man. There ain't no more chapters after this in Genesis. Okay. So.
Good. No, I'm just excited to get on to Exodus. We got a lot to talk about.
I couldn't have been a better delivery. Good. Okay. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Eating the Apple. I'm Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And we're going to be jumping right back into Genesis chapter 47. At the end of last episode, we were discussing Jacob's journey to Egypt. Joseph had just revealed his ruse that he was in charge of all of the grain and could provide his family with enough to not just sustain them, but to help them live the lives that they were accustomed to living. And so Jacob trusted him and brought everything down into Egypt. And so in 47, we are going to be discussing the way Joseph administered over Egypt and the way he administered the famine that he had prophesied, or that I guess the Pharaoh's dreams had prophesied 9 years before. So at the very beginning of 47, Joseph presents his family to the Pharaoh and says, here's my family. And they're here. They've brought everything, even though you said don't bring everything. They went ahead and brought everything. And basically lets the Pharaoh look upon them, right? And say, like, okay, what do we have here? What kind of folks are you? So in 47:2, it says, he chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh says, what is your occupation? When I was digging a little bit deeper into some other text, it said that it's likely that Joseph found 5 brothers that didn't present as, he found like 5 shepherding looking brothers, you know? Mm-hmm. Did you look into that at all?
No, I didn't.
So
I've done a lot more research on this stuff, the farther we get into it. And truth be told, I actually finished this section so long ago that was before I started doing the deeper dives into some of this stuff. So it's still pretty surface level for me.
Okay, no worries. So according to Rashi, the 5 that he presented were Gad, Naphtali, Dan, Zebulun, and Asher, basically to say, we're just a meager shepherding family. You know, he didn't want to show them Reuben, because Reuben is the firstborn. He's the oldest, he's the biggest, you know, whatever. I don't know if he's the biggest, but he's definitely, you know, he presents as the firstborn, probably a take charge kind of guy. Mm-hmm. And then definitely not Simeon and Levi, because those dudes will kill you. And then, you know, Judah's a grown ass man, you know, so he presented them.
So was there anything in your research that you found that explains the whole Judah thing? Because didn't we talk about in the last episode that he ran off or whatever, you know, was separated from his father's household for at least a while? You figure any more of that out in terms of why he's back now?
No, I didn't really look into it. I think that whole Judah story that we get is meant to take place sometime in that interregnum between Joseph's capture and his ascendancy. So, I mean, you know, you got 13 years there. So I'm assuming that's when that all took place. That said, I mean, I guess it's not too outside the realm of possibility that, you know, Judah he at least had the sons. If they weren't marrying age, then they were, you know, shepherding age. They were old enough to be, you know, self-sufficient-ish. And then so by the time they became marrying age, which, by the way, do you have any notion about how old that is? Like, we're talking 15, 16, 17?
No, okay. It hasn't even come up tangentially in any of the research I've done thus far.
Okay. Well, I figure, you know, say that they're, you know, 15 whenever Joseph gets sold off. By the time he's, you know, that gives us 13 years to play with, or say they're 10-ish. Mm-hmm. Gives us 13 years to play with when can be married and killed, Onan can be married and killed, and Shelah can be at least young enough to not be marriageable, and enough time can pass to where he becomes marriageable, and Judah still kind of holds him off to the side so that God doesn't find him to be reproachable, you know? So, I mean, but again, that's all based on the things that I've already read, not things that I did any extra deep dives on. So, right. So again, he presents his 5 brothers to the Pharaoh, and Pharaoh says, they said, okay, we're just shepherds, no big deal. And the Pharaoh said, okay, cool. That's great. We know that the famine's severe where you come from. Go ahead.
Does it seem weird to you that this is again retelling in a way? It's not direct like the chiasm thing that we talked about in the past, but like Pharaoh knew that, like Joseph already told him that these are my brothers and they're
Mm-hmm.
shepherds or whatever. Does he really need to come back and tell them, or is it more ceremonial? Like you're being presented before the Pharaoh now he's officially going to have to tell him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure about the ceremony aspect of it, but it definitely would seem if there was someone to whom you're supposed to be, you're supposed to hold some sort of reverence, like a pharaoh. All of this has already been promised. It's already been, they've already discussed all of this, right? And then you go and get them, and you're like, all right, these are the guys I was telling you about. Just making sure we're still good because you're a pharaoh. You could be. We could be subject to your whims.
I mean, if you think about it, the monarchs in England and stuff, just our culture a little bit more familiar with that, but you definitely would not be presented to get an audience with the monarch and just hobnob. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and so I guess the Pharaoh asked, "What's your occupation?" They said that we're shepherds, just like everyone else in our line are shepherds. And he said, "Okay, great. Sounds good. You can still go to the land of Goshen, which, as we discussed in the previous episode, is some of the choicest land in all of Egypt. It's fantastic." And he also says to Joseph, "Hey, if you have any livestock, if you have any herders among your 12 brothers, let me know, because I'll give them a sweet gig."
But like, is there a difference between cattle and sheep in this respect? Like, don't you think they've already got all this and this is what they do, that he would know? You know what I mean? Like, and also, like, how do I want to phrase this? Pharaoh told Joseph previously, "I will give your family this land and all of the best of Egypt." You know what I mean? And now it seems like he's just, you can stay there for a while. You know what I mean?
Let me see. Let's see what it says exactly. Yeah, we've come here to live for a while because the famine is severe. So now, please let your servants settle in Goshen. Yeah, that's 47.
Yeah, and then 6 says, the Pharaoh's saying, the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. But it doesn't say anything about the rest of that or ownership or anything.
I don't know. I don't remember that they were promised ownership necessarily.
Yeah, let me go back real quick.
And then, so while you're looking at that, I'll just kind of continue. I won't go too far, but so yeah, the Pharaoh says, "Hey, by the way, if I need a livestock officer, basically." So again, we're talking about a choice gig, someone who's I would assume whose only direct report is the Pharaoh. And they're like, "All right, now that you're here, come shepherd my people," which I guess is kind of reflective of how revered, or how much, what's the word? How much honor or whatever, like how much favor Joseph has already garnered from the Pharaoh. He's like, if your brother's anything like you, I could use a dude to watch my sheep.
All right, so here it is.
Edit real quick.
45:18. And bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of the land in Egypt, and you can enjoy the fat of the land.
Okay.
I think there was another part where maybe it was mentioned as well, because I remember the wording differently. It could have been a different translation that I was reading at that moment, but there is that.
Okay.
There's cool. The give there and not here.
Interesting. I wonder what that give is meant to imply.
Yeah, and it could be a translation issue thing that might have been extremely similar in the original text, but not not in the way we have it now.
Yeah, that's fair. And so then Joseph brings his father Jacob over to meet the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh, I have a little bit of expounding to do on that. I had a little discussion with someone. Okay, so he said. So the Pharaoh says to Jacob, he says, "How many are the days of the years of your life? How old are you?" And he's like, "I'm 100.
That's weird.
The days of the years of my life have been few and miserable, and they have not reached the days and the years of my forefathers and the days of their sojournings." So he's just whinging. He's just complaining.
Yeah, but
he's a miserable old coot.
Well, and not only that, but he says it like it's normal. He's like, "Yeah, was this normal enough? If we go back and find records from ancient Egypt, are they going to show people regularly living to, and after the flood, God said we're going to number man's years at 120. So, he's still got a ways to go, even though he's, beyond the 120 now. Like,
the Pharaoh's like, damn, you made it all this way? How about you be my shepherd? Like, why don't you work the land, dude? Strong.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay. So Jacob blessed the Pharaoh, which I guess I read is a pretty common occurrence. Like you bless the person that gives you an audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so it says Joseph settled his father and brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses, as Pharaoh directed. So I'm not sure how much it matters, but just for historical context, Goshen is under the priesthood of Ramses.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at the maps, Goshen's off to the east side of Egypt. It's in the floodplain of the Nile, so that's why it's fertile. It's considered the best of the land, and more or less not susceptible to droughts, because the Nile's going to flood anyway.
Mm-hmm. Man, you'd think for everyone living in Egypt, that'd be a worthwhile trek to get up there.
Yeah.
Okay, so there was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was severe, and both Egypt and Canaan wasted away because of the famine. Joseph collects all of the money in Egypt, and
nobody has any money except for Pharaoh and the priests. I think it says at some point the priests are unaffected because they have allotments, I guess.
That's right.
Of food.
Yeah, so they're given a salary by the state, and because of that, they never experienced the drought as severely as the people that work the land. Yeah, so there was. It says, so Joseph sustained his father and his brothers' entire household. So basically, they don't experience the worst of what the Egyptians experience.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's good to be king, or king's favorite, I guess.
Exactly. And then, meanwhile, Joseph, while he's ensured the survival and the favor of his family, all of Egypt is coming to him saying, he's like, we're starving, and we've given all of our money away in order to buy grain. Now what? Like, what do we need? Would you have us die in order so that we might, or would you give us food, so that we may live and not die? So he got all their money went away. They ate that grain. And then he said, well, how about your livestock? I'll take all your livestock and make that property of the Pharaoh. And they're like, I guess,
I'm sure plenty of people would be bending over backwards to justify this as he's being benevolent. Oh, you don't have money? Well, I'll just take what you got, but seriously, you have all the money. You can just let some go. You know what I mean? The people that you're making your money off their backs, you kind of need them.
Yeah. Well, we haven't even gone the entire way down into the depths that Joseph is willing to go to subjugate these people yet. So they're out of money. They're like, well, we have this livestock. And he said, nice choice. I'll take it. And they give away their livestock. The livestock becomes property of the Pharaoh, and they get the grain to sustain themselves. And I'm not sure if we're getting any kind of like time frame here, but by the time their livestock, it says Joseph gave them food in return for the horses and for the livestock and flocks and in cattle and donkeys, and provided them with food for all of that livestock for a year. So sorry, it says for a year. Okay, so that was all in the first year. All of the people in Egypt have given up their food, their livestock and their money. The first year of the famine. That's how bad it was.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I was just curious because horses evolved in the New World, didn't they?
I thought they were Asian.
Okay.
But they were came from the plains.
Okay, maybe I was wrong about that. No, you're right, because they were brought to America. The Native Americans didn't have it. Okay. So I was just looking up when horses made it to Egypt, and it's approximately 1700.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So anyways.
Checks out.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second year they said we won't hide from you. Like we recognize your power in granting us basically the ability to live, but we forfeited everything. It's nothing remains except for our bodies and our land. And Joseph said, "Sounds good." So he takes their land. Deal. Yeah, he's like, okay, all of the land is belongs to Pharaoh. You can eat. And like you said, the Egyptians were like, thank you, you've given us life. Like there's no compunction about this being anything other than a benevolent act on Joseph's part. Because the alternative would be that he just lets them starve and then takes the land. He could do that. They could all die. And then he could just be like, okay, plant the Pharaoh's flag right here, and this is ours too. Okay, so he bought up all the farmland, and everyone got to retain the ability to plow their fields. They all get to work the fields just like they normally could. But now 1/5 of everything that they grow is property of the Pharaoh. So it's basically
is that exempted from this famine time? Like, do they get to keep everything? Is it,
that's a
I
good
don't
question.
know how much is actually growing. Obviously,
Right.
with that floodplain, you would think something would grow, but
right. And that's one thing I didn't mention is Joseph gives them seed. He's like, whenever they say,
Right.
okay, well, you can have our farmland, and he's like, okay, well, here's this seed, take this and sow this. I'm like,
Right.
well, the people are probably like, well, when? Like,
Yeah.
will you let it, like, on your newsletter, let us know when the famine's over so that we can go ahead and start planting, because
Right.
nothing's growing, dude. Yeah, and like you said, the floodplain is probably great. Jacob and his sons, Joseph's brothers, they are not affected by this. Like, they're
Well, at least not to the same degree.
Right.
They're probably living nice.
Yeah. Somewhere I read, and it was probably in the Rashi interpretation, was that their quality of life barely suffered. Okay, so he bought all their farmland, and he in the it said the land became the Pharaoh's, and it said he transferred the populace to the cities, from one end of the boundary to the other end. It says he reduced the people to servitude. And that we might, if we were going to be super cynical, we could say that sounds like slavery. But essentially,
if you come down to verse 25, it says, "You have saved our lives. May we find favor in the eyes of the Lord. We will be in bondage to Pharaoh." So, if bondage isn't slavery, I don't know what it is.
Right. So I think the way one interpretation I've read is that you can say bondage to us means slavery. It can literally mean bound, right? Like you control the chains, that connect us to the land or whatever. And essentially, those chains is the tithe. It's that 1/5. He's like, so their bondage is through that 1/5 tithe.
That could be, I guess, yeah. And I mean, and slavery wasn't exactly the same, back then as it is now, or at least as we understand it now. But it definitely wasn't good. So
yeah,
I think that might be a slightly more favorable interpretation. Hopefully, it's correct.
And I don't mind extending them that that little bit there, because it's, to me, it still sounds like bondage. And
yeah, well, I mean, you have nothing left to sell except yourself.
Right.
Your land's gone. You have no way to make food.
Yeah, exactly right. And meanwhile, Joseph, I mean, it's kind of a shrewd move, because like I said before, you could have them all suffer and die, but what would you be gaining? No one would be there to process the land. You know what I mean? So you might as well get your 1/5. So it says in 26 that Joseph established it as a law concerning the land in Egypt that is still in force today, that 1/5 of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. Except, and then obviously it goes in and says that the land that the priests governed did not belong to the Pharaoh.
Yeah, and again with the still to this day thing, like
yeah. What do you think of that?
I don't know. It just depends on when this was written. There's lots of different estimates. You have different sources that write it differently. I think the J source is most of this. I could be wrong about that. I'm definitely not a Bible scholar or textual criticist, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think
I don't know what to think of it.
It just makes me wonder why they're okay with putting that, like, at what time, as at the time of this writing, it's still in force. Okay, well then please, by all means, show us your hand and let us know when this was written, who wrote it, yada, yada, yada.
Well, it definitely contrasts with the way that we look at it today, is it inspired, whether or not you believe it literally. Most Christians believe it's inspired by God. And so why would God inspire someone to date it in this way if it's supposed to be timeless,
Yeah. And it could be, and I mean, if this is considered to be, like you said, if it being timeless is certainly a concern when it comes to like statements like these, but also this is like the written version of the oral record that was supposedly passed for a millennia before Moses put it to paper. You know what I mean? Put it to stones, right?
I don't know about all that, because it's clearly not written by Moses. I mean, clearly, what I mean?
Sure. But if we were to put ourselves in the mindset of like a believer,
I guess you could say that Moses kind of wrote it and then other people got it, and that's how we ended up with it. But I mean,
Mosaic authorship to me is an interesting concept, because I'm starting to kind of come around to find reasonable the conclusion that when we talk about Mosaic authorship, what we're really talking about is him being the one that set these things, that basically set these things as truth.
Mm-hmm.
And the closest person with a pen is the one that wrote them down. But he's like, look, this is the way it is. I've been bestowed by God with the ability to be the one who says that this is truth. So get what I just said. And again, I'm playing devil's advocate and assuming that that's what a believer might say. I mean, I certainly personally don't necessarily think that if there was a Moses that he's the one that wrote everything down. But this is something that if I'm going to lend credence to any idea that a believer, or to the idea that a believer might espouse, it's that, and if Moses wrote the Pentateuch, it would be, or the Torah, I should say. That's how I assume they would go about it. They certainly wouldn't be like, oh, he's the one with a package of pens and he wrote everything down,
No, right. So have you looked into the textual criticism stuff at all in terms of like the source materials?
I'm not sure. Maybe. What do you mean? Like who we assume
not
are actually the authors?
Who.
Okay.
But, so this Friedman book that I'm reading, he goes on about it some because he uses the differences to give you evidence that the Exodus was just the Levites and not all of Israel. But the J source is called J because it's the Jehovah source. And so in the priestly, the other major of the four contributors, they don't have Israel knowing the name of God as Yahweh, Jehovah, whatever, until after the Exodus and Moses brings it to them. But the J source, the Jehovah's Yahweh source, has it known from the very beginning. And of course they interweave a little bit. And so that's why we were talking about like, where does it say El and where does it say Yahweh or whatever. But he brings this up a lot and tries to use it as an excuse for why this happens. But if the Yahweh source had it from the beginning, then the Yahweh source had to have known everything that came in afterward.
Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with that. I haven't read anything about that. I probably need to.
This is the one that I'm referring to the most because it's the one I'm reading at the moment. This is the one that I have kind of next in line. And I have a feeling this is going to cover that. This seems to be an extensive scholarly work, so it's going to be hard to understand. It's probably going to take a long time to read. There's lots of notes, things like that. So I could be wrong about it. Maybe it's not academic work, but it's definitely dense. So I'm hoping this will cover that in more depth, so I don't have to go digging even further than that.
So Joseph establishes this law and says that you have to pay a 1/5 tax or tithe.
It says that that's when it was established, but didn't Joseph say he was going to do that, like when he's talking to Pharaoh about his dream? So, is this another retelling, or is this him saying, okay, it's going to be this way from now on, not just for this famine thing? I don't quite get that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. As far as I recall, the 1/5 thing was just a plan to save grain for the future famine. I didn't realize that he was like, and something's going to happen that says that we're going to have that in perpetuity.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what we just read, is it not?
Well, just now it said that the establishment of the law was after the Egyptians sold them their land and their bodies. Whenever Joseph was interpreting the dream to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams to him, he did mention 1/5, but it was in the context of saving grain for the famine during the years of plenty.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, is this two separate things and now it's going to be permanent, or, is this a retelling of that bit of it? Because that happens a lot. There's lots of, we talked about the chiasm stuff, but there's also lots of little retellings that don't seem to be chiasms in terms of they're told differently. There's details that are, contradictory sometimes, but there's lots of little retellings like that. So I'm not sure which one this is.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, I hadn't considered that. It seems to me that it's more of a. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a. Nothing in here is coincidental. I don't think it's all been poured over so to make everything cohesive. But yeah, I hadn't considered that it could be either the same thing as before, or a some sort of chiasm or what have you. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the Israelites got to settle in Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. So when we talk about the acquisition of property, I would personally assume that means that they own this land, right?
That's the way it seems to me.
Yeah. And Jacob lived there for 17 more years, and he comes to Joseph and he said, look, whenever I die, make sure that you send me back to Canaan. And in order to like make sure that you're going to follow through on this, I want you to put your hand under my thigh. And then it said, carry me out of Egypt and bury me where my fathers are buried. Joseph said, you got it, dude. And he said, swear to me. And Joseph said, yep, I will do that. And it says he leaned on the top of his staff at the end of 47, which basically means the head of his bed. He prostrated himself before him and said, it will be done. Right. Okay. So we're on to 48. This is where Jacob is going to be asked to bless Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. I should say Manasseh and Ephraim because they should only be referenced in their birth order if we're doing things correctly. So again, at the end of 47, Jacob is one, and he says to Joseph, hey, just so you know, before I die, take me back to Canaan. And here we are at the very beginning of the next chapter, and Jacob's dying. Someone comes up to Joseph and says, your father's ill. It's probably time for you to go and, do the thing you do the death rites and stuff.
Yeah, I gave your blessing.
That's right. So he brings his sons, and I'm not sure if Jacob has met Ephraim and Manasseh and Ephraim, but as soon as he sees them,
I would assume they have.
You'd think, but it says that he's like, who are these people? Who are these? Who's this? I'm not sure if that's because he can't see or if he doesn't know who's with him, but right. I'm assuming if he's probably, has poor sight and sees a ghostly figure of Joseph and two smaller people. He's probably like, who do we have here? Could be that. Before I get too far, a little fun thing here. It says that Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me and said to me, I'm going to make you fruitful and increase your numbers. I will make you a community of peoples, and I will give this land an everlasting possession to your descendants after you. That appearance of God to him at Luz, that was basically the establishment of Bethel, right? That Luz became Bethel.
I don't know. That's one thing I hadn't looked up. I should have. I don't know why I didn't.
No worries. But yeah, I think that's what I think. I mean, Luz becomes Bethel, and I want to say that's when that is the house of God. And
so why then? Like I don't want to make too much about him telling him this again because I'm assuming he's already heard the story. You know what I mean? I could see it being like I'm on my deathbed. This is solemn. This is what happened. I'm just retelling it to set the stage, whatever, for what's going to come. But if that's the case, why is he still referring to it as Luz or Luz, however you pronounce it? Why is he still pronouncing it that or calling it that instead of Bethel or El Bethel or whatever it became? Especially if he renamed it that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me see if Rashi has anything about that. Nope, sure doesn't. Yeah, that's a good question. It could be that, I don't know, again, to try to play devil's advocate, I really don't know. I wish I had something worthwhile there. Yeah. Except maybe that, that's how we call things the things that we refer to them as children. And like, sometimes we don't grow out of that. I'm not sure. But yeah, it was after that. I think it was after that, that visit from God that he established Bethel, or at least put the stone in the ground. Dug the well. So let's see. Yeah. So he basically says to them, all right, bring your sons forward. I'm going to take ownership of them. They will be my sons. This is it. This is that thing you were referring to in the last episode.
Why?
So, okay. Why? That's a good question. The way I see it, Jacob needs to ensure there needs to be an establishment of lineage to ensure that blessing gets bestowed. And by there's all this cloudy kind of, lack of clarity when it comes to birthrights all throughout Genesis, but especially with Jacob's descendants, because Joseph, even though he's the firstborn to his favorite wife, he's the 11th son. So he's like, look, I'm going to subvert all of this birthright stuff and just get straight to giving these boys my blessing. And by doing so, in order to do so there's no question, I'm going to make them mine.
Okay, but if he knows that Joseph is part of this blessed line from God who's going to be, fruitful and multiply and create nations and everything else, why would he assume that these two that were born to Joseph in Egypt are not part of that? One of them might get that blessing, might get that birthright. Why does it take him away so that Joseph has to have more kids? Is this because they were, born to an Egyptian mother or
born outside the promised land, or who knows? but I mean, it could be a redundancy. He wants to make double sure.
Maybe, I guess.
He's like, I guess until, and essentially, you could say that until he actually makes it a thing, like he's about to do in this chapter, he didn't feel comfortable just assuming that God was going to follow through in the way he preferred. He's like, he's done everything he can. Jacob's done everything he can up until now to make sure that it's known that Joseph is his chosen son, right? It's so when he's presented with sons, Jacob's like, oh, good. He's like, here's what we're gonna do. I'll just make your sons my sons. And I think we learn later that he excludes Levi from he basically chops up Joseph's inheritance and takes away Levi's. And so there's still 12 portions of inheritance to be distributed, but these boys fit right into that. They're like, so see, numbers still work out.
According to this, it would seem that would be because Levi wasn't part of Israel at that time. The tribe of Israel did not contain Levi, so there was no birthright for them to have.
Yep.
And no blessing.
There are definitely. Yeah, there are academic theories. It's very interesting, but the way and so as such, let's say that that's the case. Like what that book is saying is the actual factual truth. The way they retcon it, I guess, or put it like make it part of the story is pretty good. You know, I mean, sure, like Levi. I mean,
according to him, it's because they're the ones telling the story. So you would think if that was the case, though, that they would be like, you know what, we're going to get a little more. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
We're going to get the blessing that we want out of the story that we're telling.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a fantastic point. So he brings Israel's eyes were failing because of his old age and he could hardly see. Here we go. So Joseph brought his sons close to his father and kissed them, and his father kissed them and embraced them. He basically, the right hand is the tool by which you're supposed to bestow I forget the Hebrew word is, but the birthright or the blessing of the birthright. Joseph leads Manasseh, his firstborn, to Jacob's right, and Jacob switches hands. He puts his right hand on Ephraim's head and his left hand on Manasseh's head.
Yeah.
And Joseph's like,
he's like, no. And Jacob's like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. It's like, what do you...
Leave me alone.
Yeah. So, yeah. And he's like, no, this is my firstborn. And his father, like you said, he's like, no. He's like, look, I know what I'm doing. I've been through this. Did you not hear the stories? Literally everyone so far. I mean, so look, I'm going to go over this extemporaneously, and I want you to catch me if I have any flubs here. Adam he fell from grace. Okay. Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel. So he killed the person. He killed the second born, right? And so Seth became the lineage. Seth became the person that, he basically removed himself from the line. So he was jealous of the second born, killed him, and then the third born got the story, like the lineage, right? Yeah, Shem is referred to as brother of Japheth the elder. So Japheth is suspected to be the oldest, then Shem, then Ham.
You know what it is? I watched that Noah movie last night, and in it, Shem is the oldest, then Ham, and then Japheth.
Really?
Okay, yeah. So, go ahead.
Well, it's often given. So just like we were talking about before, they list the sons in birth order, or in birthright order, not birth order necessarily. So like whoever's given the birthright is given priority in the naming or in the line.
Well, so if that's the case, it shows that Abram is the one that gets the birthright, but it also kind of implies that Abram is first, because it just doesn't ever say anything other than that. So if the order in the book is birthright order, then we don't know who was the oldest. You know what I mean? It doesn't specify.
Okay, no problem. So I'll get back to it. So I guess Abram isn't the necessarily the firstborn. We're not sure. But like I said, like we were going over before, Japheth is thought to be the oldest of Noah's sons, and Shem is the one who provides the lineage throughout for the like he's the Abrahamic father, right? He's the and then we're not sure about Abram, like you said, and then born to him was Isaac, and we already know the story there. Ishmael is the firstborn, but he gets cast away into the desert. He's a donkey. And so Isaac, the secondborn, gets the birthright. To Isaac are born Esau, the firstborn, and then Jacob. Jacob gets the birthright. To Jacob, his 11th son gets the birthright. And then here we are, Joseph's sons. Jacob's well steeped in this history, and he's like, look, I'm just going to skip all of the heartache that comes from like one person killing another or betraying another or having to walk through the desert for decades. I'm just going to give the secondborn the birthright.
I don't think that's an interesting way to look at it. And, it's got some humor to it as well. But like, you can't say, I don't think that was necessarily the way it would have gone down, just because the firstborn birthright had to have been a thing, for them to subvert. It can't have been normal for the other ones. You know what I mean? So it just, that doesn't seem likely to me.
Okay. That's me trying to be as generous as possible.
Right. I mean, but he also could have been moved by God,
Right. Well, that's the whole thing. I was reading some interpretations the other day, and they basically say all of this intervention is, all of these like subversions of the normal order are meant to imply that God is the one. Like this stuff is so like essential to the way things worked then that for it to be subverted, it had to have been God. It has to be an act of like intervention. And so, I don't know, to imply that that it's of a human creation, I think is, if I were a believer, if I was thinking like a believer, I would say that like, nah, that wouldn't work. You have to have, God would have to be involved, and God's involved through this line. And so Jacob has all of the latitude he needs to cross his hands and bestow blessings that way. But also, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, it just seems odd. Like,
also, why don't you just like switch, like, hey, why don't you come over here, Ephraim? He's like, no, that's Manasseh you want over there. And he's like, just bring him over here.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it doesn't even matter anyway, because neither one of them's getting the firstborn birthright. They're now Jacob's sons.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's true. But they're, at the very least, they're being granted a portion of land, a section of the promised land.
So I wonder, I'm going to have to look that up. Does the birthright order or the birth order affect anything other than the firstborn's birthright? Because on the Bema podcast, they talked about how the birthright, what it meant was you would get a double portion of the inheritance. So if there was 10 children, they would divide it 11 ways. The firstborn would get 2 portions. But he also had the responsibility of taking care of that family unit after the patriarch died, and that's why he got the double portion. But I don't know if there was any other, like if the birth order then trickled down, so to speak, in their blessings. I don't know.
That's a very good point. I hadn't considered that. So let's see. Okay. And so Israel at the end of 48, then Israel said to Joseph, I'm about to die, but God will be with you and take you back to the land of your fathers. And to you I give one more ridge of land than your brothers. There's the double birthright. And the ridge I took from the Amorites with my sword and bow. I wanted to highlight this. Do you know what land he's referring to when he talks about the land of the Amorites?
No.
He's talking about the land that was taken whenever Dinah was raped by Hamor, and they slaughtered all the Shechemites. Those are the Amorites.
Okay. I mean, I believe you, but that also doesn't seem very likely, like that they had taken the land, They kind of abandoned it. And then when they come back through at some point, I don't remember if that's something I read before, if we talked about it last time, if it happened, but they go back through and they're like, oh, chill out. This is, we got to be careful here because of the shit that happened. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. And then, for that to be the case, what you just said, where you're going to be kind of like, uncomfortable there, but then feel comfortable enough about the land itself to be able to say, hey, here come these people, here come these strangers, and they own this. Like, good luck. And also to me here in 22, for Joseph to be so callous with saying by saying that he took it with his sword and his bow. We're about to learn in 49 that the reason that Simeon and Levi don't get their birthright partially has to do with their reaction in
Right.
Shechem.
Yeah.
So he's like, I took it with my sword and my bow, and and personally, I feel like I get that. He's
right.
How ownership works, and like he's saying my sword and my bow, he's referring to like the people that he's responsible for and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. But to me, it just seems callous for him to be like, I took it with my sword and my bow. Do I regret it? Maybe a little bit. Mostly I'm angry at my sons.
Well, he took it with his sword and his bow, and then he's going to punish the sword and the bow for having taken it.
Yeah, precisely. Yep. Yeah. That's right. Okay. And that's the only notes that's the only thing I wanted to kind of expound upon on 40 and 48. Any other?
No, I don't have anything else.
And also I wanted to mention how, so we talked about earlier that whenever they mention whenever you discuss any mention of a lineage of people, the birthright, when you're in speaking of them, in listing them, the person who has been bestowed the birthright will go first. So up until now, it's been Manasseh and Ephraim, but we'll notice as we go forward in the text, it's going to be Ephraim and Manasseh because Ephraim has been given favor. Okay, so he's been at the end of 48. The kids have been blessed; they are now Jacob's. And now Jacob has to bless his sons. He's gotten that part out of the way because now he's going to bless everyone else. And that includes, he needed to make sure he included his grandkids, or now his sons, right? So I thought I'd step aside. So 49 is it's mostly him blessing everyone individually. And before I go through and start reading some of this, is there anything in here that you wanted to make sure we touch on?
Yeah, the couch. I don't know where the hell that came from. There's a couple of things. I'll just jump in whenever we get to it, unless you're just going to skip it whole cloth.
No, I don't want to skip it. There's a lot in here.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just stop me.
Yeah,
but I'm gonna be using the text itself a lot.
Right.
Okay,
that's good for me. Okay.
All right. So it says, "Gather around so I can tell you what's about to happen in the days to come." He basically says, "I'm dying." It says, "Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel." I had a little conversation with a couple of folks on Reddit. I have no idea about their, like, how legitimate they are or whatever. But some of the sources they gave me said that we were accurate in assuming that Jacob refers to the person, Israel refers to the person when they are meant to stand in for the people. So it's not too far of a stretch. When I asked for some clarification, I said, it says Israel dies and is about to die. What is that referring to? And we'll get to that. But they said it's the same. The concept of Israel dying is one that we'll get to, but that's not any sort of like nothing to worry about there. Okay. Listen, sons of Jacob, my kids, listen to your father Israel. He's referring to his entire genealogy. Listen to everyone who's come before you. Reuben's my firstborn, my might, the sign of my strength. The first sign of my strength. Excelling in honor and excelling in power. Turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel, for you went into your father's bed, onto my couch, and defiled it. You had a question about the couch?
Yeah, what did he... So, like, I get that the couch is kind of a double for the bed, but what did he do to defile it?
So, Reuben, after Rebekah died, went into his father's tent and slept with...
Oh, was that Reuben?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I wasn't putting the two together. I thought it was somebody else that did that. Okay.
Yeah. And then, so I also read that he was basically trying to guarantee his birthright by doing that, which I don't understand. If one wife dies, are you supposed to... I know that like a brother will step in to, but why would you do that with another living wife if your father's still alive and all that's happened is he's been widowed by one of his four wives?
Not a wife, it was a concubine, but I get what you're saying. It makes no sense. It really doesn't. And I wish I had put that together that it was Reuben. That would have made,
And I think it was it Zilpah that he defiled?
Yes, I think so. Whatever?
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. So that's Reuben. Reuben, you don't get the birthright because you slept with one of my concubines. Simeon and Levi.
So now, hang on. You saying that you're not getting the the birthright is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he doesn't just say that. He says you're no longer going to excel. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like he's giving him a curse and not a blessing. So it goes from you no longer get the birthright to you're also getting a curse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least that's what it sounds to me.
I wonder if no longer excel doesn't necessarily denote that he will fail. There's failure in his future, but maybe like you've reached the pinnacle of your success. You will no longer.
Well, but doesn't his line do some great things later?
Reuben? I'm not sure.
I thought.
I mean, you would know.
Maybe I'm misremembering. It's been so long.
And there's so many of these. He has so many sons.
So many names.
He's gonna get a sandwich named after him, but aside from that, I don't know.
A great sandwich.
Oh man, Russian dressing. Shut up.
Oh, so good. The sauerkraut. Oh, I love sauerkraut so much.
Give me all that. Give me all that sauerkraut you got.
I might be able to send you some. I made my own. I've got like 4 quarts left. I go through phases. Like,
Damn, 4 quarts.
Last couple of years, I've eaten about 1.5 gallons of sauerkraut a year. And I do it in spurts. But I've still got some left, and my kids are coming back to Texas in a couple of weeks to visit. So if you want some, I'll send you a jar.
Yeah, I do want that.
Okay, excellent. Edit.
Okay, so yeah, so like you said, he gets his birthright taken away. I'm not sure if that means necessarily that. I'm not sure what else that entails, but we'll get into whenever we do hear more about Reuben. Yes, like because he gets land and he becomes, fortified somehow in that area in the promised land. But I'm not sure what else there is to come for him. I haven't read that far ahead. So, second, Simeon and Levi, they're going to be judged together. They're going to be given their blessings together. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly. Mm-hmm. For they have killed men in anger and hamstrung oxen as they pleased.
Now, when did that happen?
Thank you for asking. The oxen, Joseph is referred to as an ox earlier. And by hamstringing an ox, they threw Joseph in the pit, in the cistern. Mm-hmm. So that's what he did there. That's how.
Well, that's one ox.
Mm-hmm. About the oxen. yeah, exactly. I don't know. Maybe the plural has to do with Joseph's lineage. Everyone that comes after him.
Maybe. But he doesn't seem very. I mean, he was sent into slavery in Egypt, but it didn't seem to be very bad for him.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Dang it! If they hadn't done that, Joseph wouldn't have this whole story. So sure, you can say.
There's that whole thing with like Satan and stuff too. We haven't really talked about Satan yet. I've got another book that I'm reading called "The Satan: How God's Executioner Became the Enemy" from a guy that's based out of Fort Worth, the Theological Seminary, and I forgot where I was going with that. No, what?
We were talking about Joseph and him being an ox, and if that hadn't happened, he wouldn't have gone to Egypt.
Oh yeah. Basically, you could say that, like, God says he's a source of evil in the Bible, says he's a source of all things or whatever, and Satan's just doing his job. You know what I mean? Like, everything that happens, even all the way up into Revelation, where Satan's being just the biggest bastard in the history of anything, he's still doing God's work. So,
it's
an interesting way to look at things.
Well, I always find myself in movies and other media like finding something redeemable about the bad guy. And in all of the MCU, I watched the MCU at the behest of a friend, and at least the first couple of phases. And when it came time for Thanos to snap his fingers, I was Team Thanos. And when I was like, this guy makes sense. Like his motivations are pure. My buddy was like, you are part of a not very proud tradition on the internet of trolls who are like Team Thanos. I was like, I have no idea. I just thought that it makes sense. And so like when it comes to like what you're talking about with that Satan thing, like it's easy for me to see those types to reason that way, like it sounds like he's just doing the bidding of the person that we're all supposed to revere,
Yeah.
And so that's a great interjection. Okay, so still on Simeon and Levi, they hamstrung an ox. Cursed be their anger so fierce and their fury so cruel. I will scatter them in Jacob and disperse them in Israel. He's going to scatter them.
Sorry.
No, go
I
ahead.
was,
No.
no, I was very nearly about to drop an F-bomb. What does
Uh-huh.
that mean?
To
What?
scatter someone in Jacob means he's going to make it so that their birthright, their birth order
Mm-hmm.
is all throughout. He's like, you it doesn't matter that you're born second and third. What matters is that you're my sons, and so I'll give you what's allowed to you because you're my sons, but that doesn't involve
Okay.
anything specific.
I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then to disperse them in Israel again, if we're talking about the land and all of the trappings of the gifts that come from being in this line.
Well, I think at least with Levi, they are dispersed amongst
Mm-hmm.
the clans. They're the priests, so they're spread out throughout the entire nation. But I don't know about the other guys.
Well, I mean, are there Simeonites?
I mean, there have to be. They might have died out. There's the lost tribes we haven't gotten into, but
okay, cool. I look forward to that.
It's going to be a while, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't know their fate.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if we get to it, I hope we can remember this conversation and say like, there it is. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now this is one of my favorite parts because Judah, as we know, is basically set up as being like kind of a not an anti-hero, but basically, the just under Jacob or just under Joseph as like the person who carries on with the most righteous of the of the story. Judah, your brothers will praise you, and your hand will be on the neck of your enemies, and your father's sons will bow down to you. Before this, I read some interpretation that said that he's literally going down the birth, like everyone's in a row, kind of like in The Sound of Music, whenever the chief blows his whistle, everyone's in a row, and at this point, Judah kind of starts like backing up, like that Homer meme, into the bushes.
Yeah,
and they said that he had to like call him forth. He's like, Judah, like, come here, because he's like, what it said is he was afraid of the ribbing he might get from his association with Tamar.
So I'm not super up on, like I said, on the genealogies. This is not the Judah which becomes the line that the kings come from, is it?
It is.
It is. Okay,
yep.
So
we're about to.
That's what it sounded like here, but so I don't know. I'm just having issues with Joseph being the one that gets the birthright and all this stuff, but Judah's going to be the one that's like getting all of the money and everything, being kings and in charge of everything. So it just seems a little odd, and that's why I was double checking to make sure it was the right Judah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I do not know. I'm not sure why, but that's why Judah to me comes off as being. And now again, I'm reading this from a lot. So we're reading the Christian Bible. Before long, we'll be reading the New Testament. We're not stopping at the end of the Tanakh. But a lot of the context I've been gathering has been from Old Testament. I'm sorry, Hebraic sources. Like I'm trying to understand these things from like a.
Exactly.
Right.
The early Christians that came up with all this stuff were Jews, so we ought to be looking at it at least through that lens, if not I wouldn't say exclusively, but I think the best understanding is going to come from that source.
So what I've been gathering from more like Christian sources is whenever you research Judah is that they're trying to imply like a messianic kind of line here, and that's just not there when it comes to like whenever we start reviewing Hebraic sources. Like he's considered a lion's cub. So like all the imagery of lions and stuff that has to do with Judah. Like, and so he is highly revered. And I'm not sure. You ask a great question. It seems almost as if Joseph gets everything that he gets because regardless of birth order, he's the firstborn to Jacob's chosen wife. But Judah, aside from his little tryst with Tamar, doesn't deserve to have anything taken from him. And so he kind of gets promised all of these things. And again, I'm not sure how much veracity there's to all those things, but it certainly it feels like that's the direction we're going here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's definitely and it might be a later insertion, but verse 10 definitely says, like, it kind of implies the messianic prophecy thing. It says that the scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nation shall be his. Now, it could be talking about God. They obviously bring it down to Jesus.
So, you got us there. It said that he will tether his donkey to a vine, his colt to the choicest branch. He will wash his garments in wine, his robes in the blood of grapes. His eyes will be darker than wine, his teeth whiter than milk. There's a lot of imagery there, and I'm sure it has specific meaning somewhere, but I
think definitely it would have had a meaning to the people that heard it at the time, that they would have known that, it's just cultural, something that has been lost, or at least lost to those of us in the West,
Mm-hmm. But also it's ripe for pulling whatever you want out of it. There's so much there. Like, you can say whatever you want.
Yeah. And that prophecy, of the scepter not departing from Judah definitely did not happen. Whether you believe that Christ is Messiah and the fulfillment of that or not, there's definitely a line that was broken before that in terms of being the king, being the ruler, being in charge, of the promised land.
Mm-hmm. Interestingly, it says that his eyes will be darker than wine in 49:12, but in the Hebrew Bible, it says he is red-eyed from wine and white-toothed from milk. That's not saying the same thing. It's saying that he will drink. Right.
It sounds like he's a drunkard. I don't know about the teeth white from drinking milk, but
I think it has to do with the fact that, milk, how do you have milk back then? It's not from IGA. You have to have flocks. He will have an abundance of milk such that his flocks can sucker, and so can he.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
okay, I get that, but why? And I still don't get the association with teeth, but it, going back to the drunkard thing, makes his, he's gonna be so drunk that he's gonna wash his garments in wine, spill it all over or whatever. You know what I mean?
You mean
his
from
robes
11?
in the blood of grapes? Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see.
That kind of leads into the drunkard thing, but I still don't get the association with the milk and the teeth.
Yeah, I think it just has to do with abundance. He's gonna be so rich in these luxuries that he could use. He can light a cigar with $100 bill.
Yeah. Okay.
That type of thing.
I'll just have to take your word for it.
Well, again, this is from the Hebrew Bible,
right?
But it's interesting how it's been translated for a Christian context. Instead of him being a drunk, a rich drunk, you know what I mean, like kind of a prodigal son. His eyes will be darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Like, he's going to have like a kind of a swarthy but clean look. I don't know. It's like, he's just going to be, you can interpret however you want, but they definitely changed it, and the meaning does not seem to come across.
Right. I think a lot of that is the case. You know what I mean?
And if you were to change his eyes will be darker than wine, if you were to say his eyes will be darker from wine, I mean, that, that seems a little bit more conducive to generous translation. Okay, so that's what Judah gets. Judah gets pretty good little blessing there. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend towards Sidon. That's pretty good to have some shoreline. That's pretty good. That's especially for trade and for irrigation. So good for you, Zebulun. You didn't do anything wrong. Issachar is a raw-boned donkey lying down among the sheep pens. When he sees how good his resting place and how pleasant his land, he will bend his shoulder to the burden and submit to forced labor.
Your land is so awesome that you're going to be like, you know what? I'm a forced labor, slave, whatever I don't know if that's what that means, but man, this place is great. That sounds a little odd. It's got to be another, missing context for me there.
It says here, according to Rashi, that his land was blessed fruitfully. His land was very profitable, very fruitful. But he will be a laborer. His entire, all of his descendants will basically be manual laborers. It just seems so strange that he would be such a strange, you're a raw boned donkey.
Well, so the note in the NIV at least says that it could mean strong. Raw bone, you're a strong donkey.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so I want to provide a little bit more context when it comes to the genealogy, and interestingly, the order that we've been going by so far have been Leah's kids. So Reuben, then Simeon, then Levi, then Judah. Those were Jacob's first four sons, all born to his first wife, Leah, the person that he he was given as a consolation for his first 7 years of servitude under Laban. Then, after Judah receives his blessing, Zebulun gets his blessing, and Zebulun and Issachar both get theirs. Now they are also of Leah, but Issachar is the ninth born, and Zebulun the 10th. So, just kind of interesting that he's basically going down the sons. He's going through the sons from his first wife, not necessarily in their birth order, right? Okay, so Zebulun's going to live by the seashore and have a bunch of ships, which will become a haven for ships, and Issachar will be doing hard labor. Okay, then we're going to double back. We're going to go to Bilhah's children, and we're going to start with Dan. Dan will provide justice for his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan will be a snake by the roadside, a viper along the path that bites the horse's heels so that its rider tumbles backward. Do you have any context for that? Like what
I don't.
What that might mean?
So I know that later in Exodus, when we get there, this is going again on my old memories because I'm not there yet in the reading that we're doing, but I remember Dan being integral to the defense of Israel when they're wandering in the desert. So it probably has something to do with that. But in terms of like the actual, what's the word I'm looking for? The nature of what is being said here, I don't know.
Yeah, I basically took the same thing from that, and also that Rashi provides some commentary that he will have traits like a snake, where the lying in wait means that he will set traps. He'll be very patient in providing defense for Israel. And then it says, "I look for your deliverance, Lord." Verse 18. Interesting, kind of just thrown in there.
Exactly.
Let's see, if I may. This is Rashi. For your salvation, I hope, O Lord. Or in the NIV, I look for your deliverance, Lord. Jacob prophesied that the Philistines would gouge out Samson's eyes, and that Samson would ultimately say, "O Lord God, remember me now and strengthen me now, only this once." I don't even know what to do with that commentary.
That does raise the thing. So the Nephilim, back from the beginning of Genesis, those were the heroes of old, the greats. And I thought that I read that Samson was included amongst those.
Oh, interesting.
So that's something to keep in mind in the future. And I'll try to remember I'll write that down. Try to remember to include that whenever the time comes.
Okay, cool. So moving forward, Dan, his fifthborn, got his blessing, and so you'd assume then that his sixthborn, the second son of Bilhah, would receive his blessing, Naphtali. But no, we're going to go to Asher, who is his eighthborn, Zilpah's second son, and Asher's food will be rich.
Did you do Gad?
Oh, I didn't. So sorry. We're going to go to Gad, who is Zilpah's firstborn, his seventh son, and say Gad will be attacked by a band of raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. So, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. And then
this is all kind of some Nostradamus shit going on.
Okay. And there's a lot of commentary on what that means, but it has a lot to do with future prophecy. It's essentially this is prophecy.
Right. A lot of it seems to be that way.
His eighthborn son, Asher, his food will be rich, and he will provide delicacies fit for a king. That's not bad. Naphtali, going back to Bilhah's kids, Naphtali is a doe set free that bears beautiful fawns. Cool. Thank you, Dad. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now, all right. Now we're gonna get to the people he actually likes. Okay, we're gonna get Joseph in here. Joseph again is Rachel's firstborn. Rachel being the wife that he served a second 7 years under Laban for, and his chosen wife, his preferred wife. Joseph is a fruitful vine near a spring, whose branches climb over a wall. With bitterness, archers attacked him. They shot at him with hostility, but his bow remained steady. His strong arms stayed limber. Because of the hand of the mighty one Jacob, because of the shepherd, the rock of Israel, because of your father's God who helps you, because of the Almighty who blesses you, with blessings of the sky above, blessings of the deep springs below, blessings of the breast and womb. Your father's blessings are greater than the blessings of the ancient mountains, than the bounty of the age-old hills. Let all these rest on the head of Joseph, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. That's pretty good. I don't want to go over this line by line, but he essentially is saying, you, despite everything I've already said, all these other blessings I've bestowed, you are the one, you're the chosen one. And it's through this covenant that our line is made with God that you will be the continuation, right? Or you will be the continuation of this covenant. Anything else you want to say about that blessing?
No, it just makes me wonder, like, if, again, with Judah being the line that eventually produces the kings, the extant messiahs, that they had, all the way down to David, who's, special. Why is it, like, what happened with Joseph's offspring? Where did they go? You know what I mean? It just...
Yeah, let's keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I have no idea.
I never paid attention back in the day. It was always Jesus, so...
Right, precisely. Yeah, that's part of what makes this fun. But also, I wish, I wish we had like a more... It would be awesome to eventually get some people in here who know what's going to happen, because, like, when I was first crowdsourcing titles for this podcast, someone mentioned the blind leading the blind, and it's only in situations like this where I realize what he meant whenever he gave me that.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's definitely a more apt title, but it's just not as good, I don't think.
Yeah, it's definitely not as marketable. But it's times like this where I'm like, we have no idea. We're just a couple of dumb atheists who have no freaking clue,
Well, we're in the process of eating the apple.
That's right. We're learning. Probably shouldn't, but we're doing it. Okay. So, and then finally Benjamin, the last born. Oh wait, I skipped Dinah's blessing. Oh crap, where is it? She doesn't get a blessing. She gets raped.
Well, she's a girl. She's property. Why would she get a blessing?
Sorry, you're right. Benjamin's a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours in the morning he devours the prey. In the evening he divides the plunder. Okie dokie. I don't know. I'm sure there's meaning there.
I thought that the reason that the Hebrews had their days split in terms of evening and morning instead of morning and evening was so that there was this period of rest. The Bema podcast talks a lot about that, about, God saying, that's enough. Just chill out for a minute. You deserve the rest that you're getting. And so the days start that way, so that, as a reminder of that. And this kind of seems backwards, like it's like everybody else does, just the way it sounds.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm not necessarily talking about the order, but just, what's happening during those times. So I don't know.
Yeah. If I were to provide any kind of commentary on that, it would be that you have to devour the prey before you divide the plunder, lest it go to waste.
Right, but why would that be in the morning then? I mean, obviously if you're a hunter, early morning's good, but I don't remember Benjamin being like known as the hunter.
Okay. Let's see. The death of Jacob. So he basically he calls them all together. He's given everyone their blessing, and he's like, "All right, guys, the reason why I called you here, besides to give you your blessings, is to let you know that I'm going to die, and here's what I want you to do."
I mean, that seems pretty obvious.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're like, "Oh,
he's 30 years older than he should be at this point."
That's true.
I mean,
so he's like, "Take me back to where my forefathers were buried: Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebecca." And where he buried Leah. So if we remember, Rachel was buried on a roadside. So when he finished giving his instructions to his sons, he drew his feet up to the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. So in that one verse, a lot happens. Okay, so I'm gonna get a little Bema on you. It goes from a very specific action of him drawing his feet up on the bed. He's basically sitting there kind of hunched over giving his blessings. He lays down, a very specific action of laying down. He breathed his last, which might take it might have meant that he took his last breath in that instant, but it's more likely that it took a while for him to finally expire. So we're talking about a small period of time with a very specific action, and then another period of time with a longer period of time with more actions, and then finally the entire trek all the way back to Canaan, the promise to his burial site, right? So I think I love how poetic that is. Whenever I don't
think that's now. I don't have anything because I didn't consider it, but I'm pretty sure being gathered to his people does not necessarily mean taken back into Canaan and buried with them. It's just it means he died and his spirit was, rejoining his people. So I mean, granted, I don't know it very well, but that just doesn't seem like a good interpretation to me.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right that's probably what it means. But if we were to like give it that kind of construal, I like how it kind of extends the time. I like the poetry therein. But you're more than likely right that it more so refers to the fact that he's dead and now his spirit is being cast into the hereafter.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not so keen on the poetry aspect. Like, I could see it, but it just doesn't seem to be very good poetry, let's say.
Fair enough.
But sure, it is poetic. I'll give you that.
Let's see. Genesis 50. Hey, man. There ain't no more chapters after this in Genesis. Okay. So.
Good. No, I'm just excited to get on to Exodus. We got a lot to talk about.
I couldn't have been a better delivery. Good. Okay. Okay, so Joseph threw himself on his father and wept and kissed him. He's buried, or he's preserved in a way that's in keeping with the customs of the era of the area that he's in, right? And the era he's embalmed, right?
So is he mummified?
It's a good question. I don't know if they were mummifying people then.
Well, yeah, obviously they were. We have mummies from older than that, at least older from when this is supposed to be. I don't know exactly when it was written, but the time that it was supposed to be, they were definitely mummifying people.
Well, I'm not even mentioning that as some sort of advanced technology. I just mean like in this era where they still mummifying people. Like,
oh yeah, I think so.
Okay,
I think so. And it takes a full 40 days. And that seems to be correct to me, but it says, and then the Egyptians mourned him for 70 days. Now that seems out of place. So I know Joseph was kind of revered at least a little bit, even though he's gouging everybody during this famine or whatever. But they detest shepherds, and he was a shepherd. And he's living apart from the majority of the Egyptian people. He's living in the farmland area that's more sparsely populated or whatever. So I don't know. I guess maybe if the Pharaoh said we're going to do this, that's what happened. But it just seems odd that person would be mourned by the Egyptians for so long, especially.
Yeah. I don't know. From what I've read, the 70 days also includes the 40 days for embalming. But for even then, for them to like mourning him for 70 days. Yeah, that's a good, I don't know. Like you said, it could have something to do with Joseph's favor that he's curried there, but unless directed to do so by the Pharaoh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Let's see. So basically he tells the Pharaoh, Joseph goes to the Pharaoh and says, hey, I was given very, oh,
no, he does not. He goes to Pharaoh's court and he says, talk to the Pharaoh on my behalf. So why? If the Pharaoh's only higher than Joseph in the rank because of the throne, why does Joseph need to be spoken for?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's interesting. Why would they do that? So Pharaoh relays the message back to Joseph that he's like, yeah, go ahead and do the thing that you said you'd do. So Joseph went up to bury his father. When we say go up, I'm assuming that means he traveled north to Canaan.
Yeah, up to Canaan, I would assume.
And all of the Pharaoh's officials accompanied him, the dignitaries of his court and the dignitaries of Egypt, all of the dignitaries of Egypt, and all of the members of Joseph's household and his brothers and those belonging to his father's household. So only their children, not except for their kids and flocks, everything, all of those things were left in Goshen. But chariots and horsemen also went up to him. It was a very large company. That is one heck of a funeral procession, but it's also incredibly dangerous. I wonder if that's meant to, if we're supposed to kind of gather that like, wow, what a crazy undertaking to even, if the enormity and the mass of all of this is supposed to be, if we're supposed to like understand that that's how important Jacob was, is that they were willing to undertake not only the gathering of all these people, but also the trek. Like, it's dangerous. It's hard to do.
It is dangerous. And, I think my understanding of it the first time, like when I was learning about it years and years ago, was that it is dangerous, but it's because, you're going into a wild land or whatever. But now as an adult and I'm going back through it, this level of diplomacy, like, these are officials going, and there's chariots and stuff, but I would assume that this would be seen as a funeral procession and generally have latitude. There's going to be trade. Everybody's familiar with what's going on in terms of, troop movements and everything, because you got to know what's going on your borders and everything. So I think that this would not be quite as dangerous. It is a trek, but there's a well-known route that's probably littered with people that are able to provide food and other things for travelers along the way. I don't see it as being that dangerous a thing anymore. Odd, definitely. But if this actually happened in this way, I think it would have been, like the chariots and stuff, would have been more ceremonial, and I think everybody would have given them some leeway, given that this is a funeral procession.
And also, like, the amount of riches and ostentation that I'm assuming is on display. All these, like, they're going through all these small towns. These people have never seen anything like this,
right?
Yeah, that would be that alone would, like, give them some pause when it comes to, like, should we pillage what they have in those carts?
Exactly.
Like,
I could see some people trying to pickpocket or pick off some of the stragglers or something, try to get some of that money. But for the most part, like, I don't see an organized resistance.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah. So they reach Atad, which is near the Jordan. That says lament loudly and bitterly. They're still wailing. They're basically they're crying for Jacob. And they observe a 7-day period of mourning, which is interesting. I've never the number 7, has that ever come up before? And then when they saw that they were mourning, the Canaanites nearby, they said the Egyptians are here and they're holding a solemn ceremony of mourning, and because of that, the place is called Abel Mizraim. So that's where that comes from. And
it means the mourning of the Egyptians. Which, I mean, they basically tell you that, like,
exactly, that happens so many times. Because God heard her, he was named blank, which means God heard me. Okay,
he came out covered in hair, so we called him Harry.
Exactly. And this one came out upside down, so we called him Flippity. Okay, so
what's that? Ramon and Nomar.
That's good. That's hilarious. Okay, so Jake, from that spot on the Jordan, they carried him back to Canaan as they promised they would. And after burying him, Joseph returned to Egypt together with his brothers and all of those who had gone with him to bury his father.
Yeah, they made it back safe.
Joseph reassures his brothers. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him? So Joseph sent word to Joseph saying, Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you're to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father. When the message came to him, Joseph wept.
Wouldn't that have already been, I think it was kind of implied that he'd already forgiven his brothers after the reunion in Egypt when he revealed himself.
I'm starting to wonder how much of this we can even imply, or how much we can leave to implications like that, because it's very possible. I mean, because, like, look what Jacob just said to all of his sons when he was bestowing their blessings. Like, he kept a pretty strict record of all the crap they did to him. And he's like, sorry, Reuben, like, I know that you were seeking my favor, but dude, it ain't you. And all these things. So, like, I can imagine even then, now that Jacob's no longer there to protect the brothers from Joseph's, whatever, any sort of action. Mm-hmm. He's like, hey, just so you know, Dad wouldn't like it if you visited revenge upon us.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. So obviously, I don't think any of this actually happened. If it did, it's not the miraculous stuff. There's stuff that I could grant. Okay, sure, this might have happened, but mm-hmm. I'm under the impression, especially the more I read, the more I get to be under this impression that it didn't happen, and this is just a story to explain the cultural practices we already have. Sure. Incorporate mm-hmm. some other stuff into religion or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think all of this can be. You can take the implication. It's there for the implications.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what you said kind of made sense, but I guess it comes down to, if you can interpret anything any way, then it doesn't have any meaning anymore.
Right.
So we got to kind of be careful, if we're going to try to find the meaning,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be something that it says.
Mm-hmm. Something codified that everyone agrees on. I don't even know if you're going to find that, man.
No, because I don't think you have to. It has to be codified into one meaning that everybody. Yes, this is the meaning. I think there's an MCU, a JCU that things that could be taken from it and excluding other things. It doesn't have to be one, but it can't be everything.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be something in there.
Yeah.
Whether it happened or if it was just meant to be taken as a meaning. But
mm-hmm. So from there, Joseph, he basically allayed their fears. He said, look, it's not up to me to decide how you're dealt with. That's up to God. Am I in the place of God? And that's not the first time Joseph has said that. He said, you want me to interpret your dreams? That's only for God to do. Now tell me those dreams. But now in this place, he says, that's not up to me. What has happened because of God. Like we're only here because of this is what God has intended.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, you intended to harm me, but what's done is done. So don't be afraid. I'll provide for you and your children. And it says he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So that's very nice. But unfortunately, these are the last couple of verses of Genesis. These are the last couple of sentences we'll say about Joseph before he dies. He stayed in Egypt along with his father's family. He lived 110 years. He saw the third generation of Ephraim's children. Also, the children of Machir, son of Manasseh, were placed at birth on Joseph's knees. Then Joseph said to his brothers, I'm about to die, which is interesting because if he's saying this to his brothers,
mm-hmm.
he's 110. His brothers are at least way older than that.
Yeah.
Except for Benjamin.
But it doesn't imply that. I don't think that he said it to all his brothers. Maybe some of them died.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it says, but he does still have living brothers, plural. So at least one brother that's older than him. So
yeah.
There's something about bearing the burden of this covenantal lineage that makes you just die quicker than your ancestors. But God will surely come to your aid. It says, I'm about to die, guys, but God's going to come to your aid, and he's going to take you out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So we're referring to the promised land.
They don't make it out of Egypt.
Yeah. And Joseph made the Israelites swear an oath and said, God will surely come to your aid, and then you must carry my bones up from this place. So it's almost like a contingency. He said, should God come to your aid, take my bones back to Egypt, or take my bones back to Canaan. And then he died at 110, and they embalmed him, and he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. And that is the end of Genesis.
So I think I might have mentioned this before, and I will try to find it again. I know we're going to do a recap episode at some point, and I'll try to bring it up then. But I saw something, I don't know if it was a video or something that I read, but somebody was claiming that they went down to Egypt and did some excavation stuff, and they found a small pyramid, and underneath it is like the bones of all of these people. And I think they found what they claim to be Joseph's coat still. You could tell the colors and all this stuff. So I'm gonna have to try to find that again and bring it up. That seems very, very interesting if it's true.
That is interesting. So there's not, I don't know, man, we made it through Genesis. That's pretty spectacular. We started this
celebratory
project.
Shirt.
Yeah. Oh, is that what that is?
That's what that is. I've got like 5 shirts that I think are not t-shirts, to wear on the show. Gotcha. I gained so much weight, man. Most of my clothes don't fit anymore. I'm trying to slim down a bit.
You're getting into your loud Tommy Bahama phase.
Yeah.
So I punished myself by letting the t-shirts that I owned before I started gaining weight just stay like clung to my body.
I can't do that.
That's what I get. Okay. So I didn't plan anything, but what I kind of wondered is if you'd be amenable to letting me ask you a few questions about Genesis. I have a little quiz here that I found on evergrowingchristians.com. It's 100 questions on Genesis 1 through 50. And I'm going to ask you all. No, I'm not really.
Another opportunity to fail in front of a bunch of people. I love this.
Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to be random with these. There's 100. I'm not going to ask all 100. Mm-hmm. But what I will do is, without any question. Kind of.
Can you hear this?
I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, that's what you get for having a mechanical keyboard instead of a membrane keyboard, dude.
Yeah.
So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start with question 1, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. And then, like I said, without any kind of any sort of judiciousness or anything else, any other kind of forethought, I'm just going to ask you random questions from this list. Okay.
Sure.
And question 1. Which day did God create the firmament in the midst of the waters?
Oh, now, man, I can't remember that.
Okay, good.
I really can't. But
it's multiple choice, and I'll give you the multiple choices. First day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day.
Yeah. Yeah, was that one that was different? Like between Genesis 1 and 2? I don't remember.
Well, it's not going to be. It was different. It was a distinct day. It was its own. Okay, so that was it. Actually happened on the second day.
Separated the waters from the firmament.
Yeah. On the second day, God separated the waters from the waters and created the firmament.
That was going to be my guess, but it would have been a complete guess. I didn't know for sure.
Okay. Question 2. Fill in the blank. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the blank appear." And it was so.
The land.
That's right. You got it, my man. All right, here we go. We're going to skip down a little bit. Which is the only city not destroyed along with Sodom and Gomorrah? This is ridiculously hard. Okay.
I remember it. Okay. I remember it, but I can't remember the name. Names are bad.
Here we go. Admah, Zeboim, Zoar, Bela, Salem.
I think it's Zoa.
It's
Zoar, whatever it is. Yeah.
That's right. All right, my man. I'm glad I'm asking you these and you're not asking me these. Because I already know all the answers. I wish it was
the other way around.
Okay. Question 9. Or I guess this is actually our third question. Fourth question. Who said this? I am in the place of God, who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb. Am I in the place of God? Who hath withheld from thee the fruit of the womb? And you're to choose between Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Esau, or Joseph.
Yeah, I don't know.
So Jacob said that when Rachel demanded children from him. Yep.
Right.
And interestingly enough, I hadn't put that together that every one of them is basically questioned for some reason. And they all say, "Am I in the place of God?" I say all, maybe not, but there's at least evidence of Jacob having done the same thing. Okay. Let's skip the 10th day stuff. Let's see. Here we go. This is good stuff. How many years did Adam live?
900 something.
Ooh, okay. So I'll make it easier for you. 930, 912, or 969?
I think it was 930.
It was 930.
Yeah.
Good job, my man. I love it. Okay. Which city did Abraham originally come from?
It's in Mesopotamia.
It's one of the early
land
cities.
Land of the Chaldeans. I don't remember the name of the city. I was gonna say that, but I thought that was extra biblical knowledge kind of working its way.
It's hard
thinking about it,
and also like it's one of those Jeopardy things. Like you can do well at Jeopardy if you just say the one thing that you know about the place. It's like name a Mesopotamian city. It's like nailed it. You're so smart. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm sorry about this. Is hard. What was the name of Sarah before God changed it?
Sarai.
There you go. Okay, here we go. What did Esau trade his birthright for?
Some red soup, I think. Red lentil soup, stew of some kind.
Dude, you are nailing this. I love it. Okay, let's get down a little bit. We're kind of getting mired a little bit. Who was the mother of Ishmael?
I'm having a brain fire here.
Sarah, Hagar.
Was it?
Ooh, Sarah, Hagar, Keturah, Hagar. It was Hagar, yeah.
It was
Sarah
Hagar,
was
that's right.
Sarah was definitely not the mother of Ishmael.
No. Yeah, absolutely.
Of Ishmael. Okay.
Yeah.
Good job. All right. Here we go. Which of the following is not one of the cities of the plain destroyed by God? Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, or Bethel?
Bethel?
Yeah. The other, that was kind of just tacked on there, especially given that we just talked about it. Okay. Ooh, what did Jacob name the place where he wrestled with God? Mizpah, Penuel, Bethel, El Bethel, or Mahanaim?
That one.
It was Penuel.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Penuel means I've seen God face to face. Who was the first person to die, according to Genesis? The first ever person to die.
Abel.
That's right. And let's see.
And
In
goody
what
two
city?
shoes.
Yeah. Oh, look at my flocks. In which city did Joseph become a ruler, second only to Pharaoh? Goshen, Canaan, Hebron, Mizraim, or none of the above?
Oh man, I don't know Egyptian cities that well. I know it's not Goshen because that's where they settled, but I don't know. I mean, obviously it's not Canaan, but I
It's
don't
not
know.
Canaan.
Yeah.
So the answer is none of the above. I couldn't speak. I had the first two reasoned out just like you did, but Hebron and Mizraim, I can't remember anything specific about those things. All right, let's see. Who was the first king of Gerar that took Sarah, thinking that she was Abraham's sister?
Oh, that would have had to have been Abimelech.
That's right. I figured you'd know that one. Good job. Let's see.
Well, there's lots of people named that. That's easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, probably
If you ask me
Abimelech.
which one, I don't.
What was Joseph's, or what was whatever Jacob's fifth son? Abimelech. Let's see. Fill in the blank. Blank was very wroth, and his countenance fell. Let's skip that. That's Cain.
Yeah.
Because now we're getting into like the actual translation. Okay. Oh, here we go. You just watched this movie. Which two birds did Noah send out of the ark to see if the waters had receded?
It was a dove, and was the other one a dove as well? Or I think it was different, but I can't remember. It was no. It was a blackbird.
Yes.
It's not a raven.
Why would you say that?
I guess it was a raven.
What makes you so damn sure?
I just figured it was too common. I thought it was something else that was, I don't know.
So Noah first sent out a raven and then a dove multiple times to see if the waters had subsided. Okay. We're only in the first half of the chat. Let's see if we get into some good stuff later. Internet. Let's see.
Edit. Speaking of Noah, though, seriously, you need to watch it. Oh my God. I literally cried laughing a couple of times. It is so bad. And
but isn't it made by freaking Darren Aronofsky?
Yes.
And that's what I'm
saying. So I remember hearing about it coming out, and it's got what's his name?
Russell Crowe?
No, the old guy.
Christopher Plummer.
No, brain fart. He played Thor, not Thor.
Anthony Hopkins?
Yeah, Anthony Hopkins. It's got him in it, and I remember it coming out, and it was a big deal, and the trailer, like, I didn't want to see it based on the trailer, but at least it looked beautiful, you know, and my in-laws saw it, and I'm pretty sure that they enjoyed it and stuff. So I never had a desire to watch it, but it came up as on my, Netflix recommendations, and I'll go to watch it, and I'm just in tears the whole time. It's crazy bad.
Oh, man.
It looks really good for the most part. It really takes some liberties with the story. Oh, it's worth. Honestly, I think I'm going to buy it. There's a special edition that nobody apparently wanted, so I can find a dozen of them used where it's like in a wooden case and stuff. I'm going to buy it. I love that horrible, horrible movie.
Wow. Okay.
It's so
good. We'll have to give it a shot. Who plays Noah? Is it Anthony Hopkins?
No, he plays Noah's grandfather. It's Russell Crowe that plays Noah.
Oh, that's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and so, what's her name? Jennifer Connelly plays his wife, and then there's plenty of big names in it, but what's her name? Played Hermione.
Emma Watson.
Emily Watson. Yeah, she plays a significant role as well.
Really, another one.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Edit. All right. So, given your knowledge of Noah and all the extensive research you've done by watching that movie.
Yeah.
At what age did Noah start building the ark?
Oh, man.
And I do have multiple choice if you want it.
Yeah, give me the multiple choice.
300, 400, 500, or 600?
I think it was 400.
He was 600 years old.
Really?
Yeah, but he was strong.
He can't have been. Hang on.
Genesis 7:6. Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Because I remember that we talked about this in terms of like the numerology of the day. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. He couldn't have been 600 when he started it, because I'm pretty sure it took more than a year to build.
Okay, fair enough.
I could be wrong about that, but
I'm just reading from a cheesy website. So
in the movie, that horrible, horrible movie, the Nephilim are these great hulking like mud rock beasts, and they help him build the ark. And so it happens like that almost. But I swear I remember from, back when I was first learning it years and years and years ago, that it took like a long time. It was just him and his family doing this. I don't know. I can't find it now, but.
Okay. A long time to build.
I guess we'll have to go with that quiz, assume it's correct.
Yeah. Well, let's just say, look, you're wrong and you're trying to find a reason why you're trying to save face, and it's actually despicable and detestable. Okay.
That could be.
Which son of Jacob was responsible for suggesting the selling of Joseph to the Ishmaelites?
Oh man, the name's coming to mind is Reuben, but I think Reuben's the one that was trying to talk him out of killing him. Was it Reuben?
So they don't go with Reuben here as an explanation. They say that it was Judah, because Judah said, "Why would we kill him when we can sell him?"
Okay, yeah, you're right. I think Reuben's the one that was planning on coming back and getting him or something.
Yeah, that's right. He returned and he saw I wasn't there. He's like, "I better get the hell out of here because this isn't good."
Yeah.
All right, let's see.
Did I get the right hole?
Oh no. Okay. Whose dream indicated 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine?
Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's another. Did we already do this? Let's not do that. Some of these are repetitive. These were clearly compiled and not thought of in one. How many years passed from the time God? Yeah, you might be. How many years passed from the time God made the covenant with Abram to the time of Israel's deliverance from Egypt? So we're kind of skipping ahead, but
okay. So
there's multiple choice if you're interested.
Yeah, give me the multiple choice. I know the Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years, maybe 400 exactly, but
that's it. That's the answer.
I don't think that's how much time they spent in Egypt. But there had to have been at least another 100 years before that when he made the covenant with them to begin with. But I'll have to go back and do the math. I'm going to write that down because I want to do that math.
Okay, so I'll let you know that the reference here is Exodus 12:40. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years.
Right.
And it came to pass at the end of 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt.
Right, but that's not Abram. That's just how much time they spent in Egypt.
How many years passed from the time God made the covenant with Abram to the time of Israel's deliverance? Yeah, you're right. So yeah, what a trash question. Okay. Let me see if I can find one worth a crap. But you know what? Let's say this is going to be our last one.
Well, I mean, clearly we've proved I'm smarter than the quiz. So.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, that's a genealogy question. Those are for the most part we skipped a lot of that stuff. Okay, here we go. This is good. In the dream Jacob had at Bethel, what was atop the ladder that reached to heaven? There's multiple choice if you want it, but what was at the top of the ladder?
I don't remember that.
Or I should just say, angels descending with a message, a burning bush, the Lord, cherubim, or seraphim.
Cherubim was my initial thought, so I'll go with that.
It says here that the Lord was standing above it. Genesis 28 says, and he dreamed, and behold, a ladder set up from the earth, and the top of it reached to heaven, and behold, the angels of God descending and ascending on it, and behold, the Lord stood above it, and said, I am the Lord, thy father, the God of Isaac, so on and so forth. So honestly, I'm going to give you half credit, because they mentioned the angels were on the ladder, but at the very top. What was atop the ladder is the question.
That's another thing I wanted to bring up, because I was doing we can edit this out if you want, but talking about the ark, this book talks about how the Egyptians had similar things, and he's trying to prove that this is why proof that it could have happened, the Exodus could have happened or whatever, but that they had also had cherubim on different on their barks and things like that. So I'm wondering how common a theme was cherubim. What everybody else in the area knew cherubim to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I haven't had a description of it so far. Just like Nephilim, essentially. We don't really know what they are, what they look like at this point. But
yeah, that's true. I would like to do some research into that. I'm not sure either. The cherubim are they're like guards, right? Aren't they? They're meant to be.
Yeah, it says that
armed guards.
They had cherubim guarding the Eden.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, there's that. There's cherubim mentioned elsewhere, but there's no description of them yet.
Okay, cool. Well, I might have to Wikipedia that and see what kind of Renaissance art came of trying to depict cherubim. That's been an interesting thing so far. Is that when I read articles for background or context, like middle age art or like Renaissance art is always so illustrative of.
So, if you want, I haven't watched it yet. It's in my watch later list, but there is a lecture series from, I can't remember which college, but it's a prestigious college, university, and they just put their lectures online, and it's about how history is painted, like the art that you see that shows history, how it's done and how you read it. And I think that might enhance your research there. If you want it, I'll send it to you. I
would love
watched
to
it,
enhance.
I intend to, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, congratulations, you passed. You are officially
I'm
a
smarter than a
Genesis
fifth grader.
scholar. But is there anything else you want to cover before we sign off for now?
No, I don't think so. This is fun. I'm excited that we're done with Genesis, mostly because I'm looking forward to getting to Exodus. There's a lot of stuff to talk about there.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to note that I have thoroughly enjoyed doing this with you so far. When I was growing up, I never studied, and I did pretty well in school because I had a good memory. But I never studied. I hated studying, and I still do. I'm doing it a lot here because I really enjoy this. But like, I was never taught how to study, and especially with groups. It was always, break up in your group, you do your own thing, and you bring it back together at the end, that kind of thing. And I think that doing this, and having this conversation, being able to bounce stuff off of you and bring it back is just so much more rewarding. And I'm learning a whole lot more this way. So I'm really glad that we decided to do this. I appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate you. And I completely agree. I think there's a lot more to be gained from having this conversation. There's two heads are better than one, as they say. And yep. I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting people interested in this type of thing that have these beliefs, and hopefully being able to enrich ourselves with those kinds of thoughts and ideas, because we could sit here and be snarky little atheists all we want, but eventually I think we're going to have to really dive into it in order to experience the fullness of what we're reading. And I look forward to that to that transpiring. But until such time as that's able to occur, I really appreciated getting to do this with you as well. I'm glad you had the idea to do it. And I'm really looking forward to, what's coming up next, not just Exodus, but the entire project. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. I don't expect necessarily this to get popular or anything like that, but if people do catch on to this, I really hope that they give us some feedback. I want them to show me where we're wrong. I want to have, I doubt very, very seriously that I'm going to be a believer at the end of this, but I could definitely have my beliefs about this changed.
No, absolutely. Yeah. So, and to whatever extent, my outlook on what we're going to be doing has changed since we started doing it. I have to admit that, this hasn't gone exactly the way that we had planned for it to. We've changed things up a little bit, but I've found myself looking into topics and different references that I wouldn't have thought beforehand. So, and that's just the first book, and that's just with the two of us, two atheists, bouncing ideas off of each other, realizing where our shortcomings are. Wait until we actually get real feedback from people that have knowledge and are like, "What are you guys doing? This isn't even the way to do it." That's going to be, I think, where it really takes off. Yeah, I agree.
Looking forward to it.
Cool. Well, as such, we wanted to thank everyone who is listening in or watching for joining us for these conversations so far. We have finished Genesis, but we have 65 more books to go. So if you have any thoughts whatsoever, we are Eating the Apple on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. You can reach out if you want to do so in private to our email, which is podcast.eatingtheapple@gmail.com. And until next time, I'm Jeff.
I'm Chris.
And this has been Eating the Apple.
Smash that like button. That's bad. That's...
Okay.
Give it a little kiss.
Oh my God.
That's a little far, but
okay. Okay, I need to get over it. But I mean, okay. Edit. Are you good?